Most companies vanish when nations collapse. They lose markets, lose financing, lose protection. But a rare few don't. They don't just survive the collapse, they profit from it. Siemens was born under a Kaiser, endured 2 world wars, lost everything under Allied occupation, and still rose to become the industrial core of post-war Europe. Toyota's factories were bombed into rubble. Its workers were nearly laid off in mass. And yet, it rewrote the global manufacturing playbook from the ashes of defeat. Barclays lost its empire. The British pound was finished. And yet, the bank engineered a way to dominate global finance again, without needing a single warship. Now Apple is moving, quietly, systematically, repositioning across borders, pulling cash out of reach. Preparing for a future where nation-states no longer guarantee dominance, but volatility does, because behind every collapse is a pattern, and behind every survivor is a playbook. This isn't about growth, it's about endurance. And the companies that master it don't just outlast the storm, they own what's left behind. There is a pattern, a survival mechanism built not for speed, but for longevity, not for expansion, but for insulation. It's called the empire profit pattern, and it's how corporations outlive nations. This isn't about market share. It's about structural endurance, the ability to detach from political systems while feeding off their breakdowns. The pattern has 3 pillars. First, mobility. These firms move capital, operations, and even identity across borders. They are never trapped by a single regime. Second, cash discipline. Survivors don't chase hypergrowth. They hoard dry powder, build moats, wait until others burn. Third, political neutrality. No flags, no ideology, no allegiance. These firms don't bet on who wins. They bet on what survives. They aren't loyal to nations. They're loyal to structure. They profit when currencies collapse. They scale when credit seizes. They adapt when governments freeze. And what looks like resilience is really pre-positioned advantage. This isn't new. Siemens, Toyota, Barclays, they all followed this playbook. Apple is doing it now. When the state stumbles, the smart capital steps in. Because the future won't be owned by countries. It'll be leased by the corporations that outlived them. Siemens was never just a company. It was the nervous system of German industry. Founded in 1847, it survived the fall of the Kaiser, the hyperinflation of Weimar, and the rise of the Third Reich. But its greatest test came after 1945. Germany was a ruin, cities burned, currency worthless. The nation split in 2. And yet, Siemens did not collapse. It relocated operations to Munich, transferred critical patents abroad, hid key talent from denazification purges, and preserved engineering knowledge in vaults, not government archives. Rather than dissolve under Allied occupation, Siemens adapted. It pivoted from weapon systems to power grids, from radio tubes to medical devices. It exported to both sides of the Cold War, NATO and Warsaw Pact. By 1950, it had doubled its pre-war margins. By 1960, it was the crown jewel of West Germany's industrial recovery. How? It didn't fight for the state. It detached from it. It didn't bet on ideology, it bet on infrastructure. And when the government fell, Siemens still had something to sell. Factories can be rebuilt, flags can be replaced. But trust in industrial continuity, that's harder to kill. Siemens survived because it obeyed the pattern. Preserve capital, protect talent, stay mobile. And when the empire dies, be ready to supply whoever's next. Toyota didn't start as a global titan. It started as a failure. By 1945, its factories were rubble, its balance sheet shattered, its domestic market vaporized. Japan had surrendered. The emperor's word no longer ruled. American generals ran the streets, and Toyota, a small truck manufacturer, was days from extinction. But collapse creates clearance. Under U.S. occupation, Toyota received direct assistance from the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, MET, not subsidies, not bailouts, but permission to experiment, to shrink, to survive. Toyota's leadership responded with a brutal reset. They laid off workers, shut down production, stripped inventory, and they invented something the world wasn't ready for: just-in-time manufacturing. With no capital to waste, no resources to stockpile, and no margin for error, Toyota built the leanest production system on Earth. By 1955, they were exporting again. By 1965, they were scaling into the US. By 1980, Toyota became the gold standard for automotive resilience. Not because of stimulus, because of starvation. Toyota didn't survive Japan's collapse by hiding. It survived by adapting, faster than the state around it. And when the new world emerged, Toyota didn't need a comeback. It had already arrived. Barclays didn't collapse when the British Empire did. It pivoted. In the early 1950s, as Britain lost India, Africa, and global dominance, its financial system was imploding. The pound sterling, once the world's reserve currency, was being abandoned. Capital controls locked money inside borders. Colonial trade was evaporating. Most British banks panicked. Barclays didn't. Instead, it helped invent a workaround: the Eurodollar. It began simply: a system where US dollars, held outside the United States, could be loaned and traded free from American regulation. Barclays became a founding player, holding USD in offshore accounts, lending to corporations and governments without touching domestic US rules. By 1968, Barclays had become one of the largest issuers of Eurobonds, and by extension, one of the most powerful facilitators of global dollar liquidity. They didn't need the pound. They didn't need the empire. They needed volatility and a new game, and they built it. Barclays became more profitable after the empire fell, because it stopped trying to save the old system and monetize the vacuum left behind. It didn't ask for permission. It created structure where none existed. The pound collapsed. The flag was lowered. But Barclays rose, unbound, unregulated, and untouchable. Because the future doesn't belong to those who beg for revival. It belongs to those who build the replacement. This isn't theory. It's a sequence, a playbook followed by corporations that outlive collapse and turn chaos into control. The empire profit pattern moves through 7 phases, each one verified, each one mapped to history, each one now reappearing in real time. Phase 1, national anchor. The company aligns itself with the dominant power. Siemens with Imperial Germany, Toyota with militarized Japan, Barclays with the British Empire, Apple with American tech finance hegemony. In this phase, the firm becomes an arm of state ambition, subsidized, protected, scaled. Phase 2, collapse shock. The empire breaks: war, inflation, surrender, fragmentation. Germany lost twice. Japan was firebombed. Britain lost its colonies and the pound's global dominance. And now, the US is approaching the same cliff. 40 trillion in debt, geopolitical retreat, internal division, no fiscal plan, no global trust. Phase 3, internal preservation. The survivors don't expand, they freeze. They slash burn rate, protect core engineers, relocate IP, hoard dry powder. Siemens moved its labs to safety. Toyota shut down and restructured. Apple today sits on $162 billion in cash. They're not betting on growth, they're buying time. Phase 4, external adaptation. Once stable, they pivot, not inward, but out. They detach from domestic demand, shift production offshore, begin exporting to old enemies. Barclays shifted into offshore dollars. Toyota entered US markets within a decade of Hiroshima. Apple is reducing China exposure and building in Vietnam, India, and Arizona. This isn't betrayal. It's evolution. Phase 5, arbitrage the void. Collapse leaves holes in logistics, in capital, in trust. The survivors step in, not as heroes, but as infrastructure. Barclays built Eurodollars to fill the gap left by the pound. Toyota replaced unreliable American cars. Siemens powered both NATO and Eastern Bloc cities. They don't wave flags. They provide function. Phase 6, capital repatriation. Once the smoke clears, they return, not with loyalty, but with leverage. They buy distressed assets, dictate supply terms, set policy by default. Barclays didn't save Britain. It engineered the system that replaced it. Toyota didn't just re-enter America. It owned market share. Apple isn't reshoring jobs. It's reshoring control. Phase 7, quiet global dominance. The company no longer acts like a firm. It behaves like a sovereign system. It prints capital, sets standards, outlasts governments. Apple designs the silicon and controls the store. Toyota has supply networks more resilient than most nations. Barclays built the rails the dollar still runs on. You don't vote for them. You depend on them. This is how profit survives collapse, not by resisting entropy, but by adapting faster than it can spread. Apple is not betting on America. It's betting on structure, its own. With over $162 billion in liquid cash, Apple today holds more capital than most sovereign nations. But it's not hoarding money for dividends or R&D. It's building insulation, positioning for disorder. Apple manufactures in 36 countries. Its supply chain crosses 5 continents. Its largest assembler, Foxconn, is not owned, but controlled through contract dominance. That's not decentralization. That's strategic dispersion. After COVID, after tariffs, after Taiwan tensions, Apple didn't wait for policy clarity. It moved, quietly, proactively. iPhone production was expanded in India. Semiconductor partnerships grew in Arizona. High-risk components are now sourced from multiple geographies. It's not just supply chain flexibility, it's geopolitical hedging. Meanwhile, Apple's cash isn't sitting in U.S. banks. Much of it resides in Ireland, Jersey, Singapore. Legally protected, tax-optimized, regulator-insulated. This is not evasion. It's sovereignty engineering. Since 2013, Apple has executed over $650 billion in stock buybacks, the largest capital return in corporate history. But behind the optics is discipline. Every dollar returned is a dollar not wasted on empire loyalty. Apple is no longer a product company. It's a capital allocator with a consumer interface. Its business model is built for fragmentation. Its governance is apolitical. Its margin discipline rivals central banks. Apple isn't trying to save the American order, it's preparing to outlive it. Because like Siemens, like Toyota, like Barclays, Apple understands the moment before collapse isn't for panic. It's for positioning. And when the next system resets, Apple won't be rebuilding. It'll already be in control. The signs are everywhere, and they all point in one direction. The United States is entering the breakdown phase. Not because of war, not because of invasion, but because of math. $38 trillion in federal debt. Interest payments surpassing $1.2 trillion per year. That's more than defense, more than Medicare, more than any single program in the federal budget. In 2025, over 35% of U.S. tax revenue will go just to pay interest, not principal, just interest. The dollar, once untouchable, is eroding. In 1999, over 85% of global reserves were held in USD. Today, it's under 58%, and falling fast. BRICS nations are bypassing SWIFT. Saudi Arabia is pricing oil in yuan. Gold accumulation by central banks is at its highest level since 1967, and it's not accidental. At the same time, America's corporations aren't retreating, they're relocating. Apple, Microsoft, Google. Combined, they hold over $700 billion in offshore cash, not just for tax, for flexibility, for escape velocity. Supply chains are being rebuilt, not for efficiency, but for resilience, diversified away from China, firewalled from domestic risk. ready to operate in a multi-currency world. These companies aren't nationalist, they're neutral. And neutrality wins when politics breaks down. Because collapse no longer means failure, it means transition. And the survivors aren't waving flags, they're redrawing the map, in code, in contracts, in capital. Empire used to mean armies, now it means APIs. Control no longer requires conquest, it requires structure and patience. This is not a warning, it's a reading of signals already flashing red. And the next great transfer of power won't be between governments. It will be from government to platform. And the firms already in motion, they're not preparing for chaos. They're preparing to harvest it. This is the future, not collapse, but consolidation. Not every company will survive the coming reset. But the ones that do won't just survive. They'll emerge stronger than states. The pattern is clear. Firms that dominate after collapse share 4 traits. First, capital insulation. They don't rely on cheap debt or quarterly hype. They build cash moats that outlast recessions and wars. Apple's $162 billion. Microsoft's $144 billion. Google's $120 billion. These are not balances, they are sovereign war chests. Second, geopolitical neutrality. These firms avoid alignment. They sell into every bloc, navigate every regime. Apple's silence on Taiwan. Microsoft's operations in Europe, India, the Gulf. They don't bet on borders. They bet on bandwidth. Third, supply chain sovereignty. They don't own factories, they own the contracts, the code, the data. That means mobility, that means leverage, that means survival, when governments can't even deliver power. Fourth, internal governance. These firms are not democracies, they're not mobs, they're structured like private states, disciplined, vertical, surgical. No parliamentary delays, no fiscal cliffs, no riots. Just cash, code, and control. This is the post-collapse playbook. You don't wait for the old system to fix itself. You build parallel tracks. You move first. You move quiet. You move sovereign. Because the next empire won't be elected. It'll be engineered. And the logos you know now, the ones on your phone, your bank, your search bar, they're not brands anymore. They're blueprints. When collapse comes, and it will, these firms won't plead for rescue. They'll deploy. And the age of nation dominance will end in silence. It always ends the same. Not with a bang, but with a transition. Not with invasion, but with irrelevance. Empires don't vanish overnight. They fragment. Their currencies lose weight. Their institutions lose speed. Their promises lose trust. And in the vacuum, the corporations move in. Siemens survived 3 regimes. Toyota outlasted war and nuclear fallout. Barclays replaced the very currency it was once loyal to. Apple is just the latest, but not the last. Because in the 21st century, the real empires won't carry flags. They'll carry balance sheets. They won't build monuments. They'll build platforms. They won't need armies. They'll need code, contracts, and cash flow. And as America faces its own reckoning, fiscal, political, and monetary, the survivors are already in motion, quietly, calmly, without asking permission. They are not here to protest. They are here to inherit. Because history doesn't care who governs. It cares who endures. And the next age will not be decided by elections. It will be decided by those who built for entropy, not stability. The empire is fading, but the machine is humming. And when the dust settles, it won't be the nation that remains. It will be the structure that replaced it.